welcome to Hey, Great Shot. This is the Great Shot Podcast, a Cracked Racquets and Tennis Channel Podcast Network production. My name is Alex Gruskin. On today's show, we've got a special ITA National Indoor Recap edition of The Deciding Point, our weekly breakdown of everything that happens across the Division I college tennis world. Of course, here on Tuesday nights, we break down the Division I women's action. And of course, over the past weekend, we were treated to a weekend, I should say, I argue, is pound for pound, day for day, the most intense weekend in the college tennis season. You have 8 top 16 battles for 3 days consecutively. Of course, a national champion crowned on day 4. As you all can tell here in the intro, my brain is still scrambled from processing what was an extraordinary national indoor event. And before we get into any of the recap, and couple thank yous have to go out right away. First of all, to everyone at the University of Washington, from Coach Stevenson, Coach Munn, the entire staff at the Nordstrom Tennis Center, everything over at the Seattle Tennis Club as well, to the entire ITA team, Cody, Justin, Joe, just everyone who makes that event so special, not just for all the athletes participating in it, but of course for all the fans who were there in person, who were viewing from afar. We appreciate their efforts. A thank you to all the sponsors, of course, who supported the broadcast as well. A massive thank you to Perry Shinen, my co-host through the entire weekend. And then, of course, our super producer, Daniel Westoff, who makes everything possible here at Cracked Racquets. We had a 3-box. We were 2 sites wide. We were able to follow all of the action. None of you see the hard work he does day in, day out behind the scenes. I cannot tell you how many hours he put in making that broadcast possible. Shout out to him for doing all that he does. Shout out to Dalton Thieneman for putting us in a position to do these sorts of things. And then, of course, shout out to the man who will be joining me here today as he joined me for the pregame, postgame podcast each and every day at the 2023 National Indoors, and the man who joins me each and every week here on this show to help break down all the Division I women's action. Of course, you know him best as the founder of the No Ad, No Problem blog and podcast, a returning champion of returning champions here on our show. And as we alluded to earlier, our Uber driver / chauffeur throughout the course of the National Indoor Weekend, it's our dear friend, John J. Parsons. Jay, hey, great shot. Welcome back to the show. You recovered? You still hungover? How are you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling okay. Your Uber back from the airport, better or worse than me throughout the tournament?
The Uber drive back was honestly maybe the highlight of the weekend for me, because you and I don't get 40 minutes of in-person time very frequently. In fact, that might have been the first time in our lives we had the opportunity to just chat extensively and follow up after follow up. It was a delight to get to spend some time with you in person. And I alluded to this last year when I was in Seattle. It was the men's indoors. By the time it was done, I was so exhausted. I got into my Uber, and then next thing I know, I'm at the airport and I go, oh, I guess I've fallen asleep. And there was no chance that was going to happen, because it was a pleasure to get to hang with you. And again, what a weekend of tennis it was.
Yeah, I feel so disconnected from my actual day-to-day life. You come back and you're like, whoa, I'm reconnecting with reality. So today has been a tough day for me, touching back down with reality. But, what a great experience to immerse yourself in tennis. I mean, unlike the NCAAs, you have the constellation, the backdraw. You're going to have those matches, 8 matches every single day until the final, right? So much tennis to be played, as we talked about, so many data input for us who follow this so closely. I could tell you everything that happened, but nothing that happened at the same time. It's a weird phenomenon.
Yeah, you watch everything, you're watching nothing. I
Yeah.
couldn't agree with you more. And again, we said it. This is the weekend. You roll the balls out. Who's good? Who's not? Who's got it? Where are these freshmen? How do the returners look? We do have so many different data points to reflect upon, and that's the plan on today's show. What we want to do is recap the final for all of you, talk about North Carolina capturing their 4th consecutive national indoor title, 7th in the past 11 years. We'll look at what this program has achieved, their spot in history with their recent run of success. Of course, we also want to offer our reflections on all of those data points. So we're bringing back something we did throughout the course of the weekend. one take each. We're going to touch on every team that competed throughout the course of the weekend. It's going to be legitimately one take each. We will be disciplined. I do think we're going to finish this show in under an hour, Jay. That's the promise I have to you, to all of the listeners. You mentioned how long yesterday was. We all experienced travel woes coming out of Seattle. It ended up snowing last night, and I was on the same flight as one of the head officials, Anthony, who we had a lovely exchange at the United counters. We were trying to figure out how to make our next connection flights. And let me just say, I ran a 4.440. I actually think I ran like a 5:40 mile with a backpack on and drenched in sweat as I get on the plane. And all that is to say, I'm hot coming into today's show. I know Jay is as well. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk a lot of tennis here today. Of course, the reason we're able to do that on this show week in, week out is because of the support we get from all of you college tennis fans who I didn't forget about. That's the last thank you. So many of you came up to myself, Jay, Perry throughout the course of the weekend. We appreciate all of your support. We appreciate all of the kind words about what we're trying to do here at Cracked Racquets. Of course, grow our beloved sport that is college tennis. All of you tuning in, supporting us, allows us to do just that. Thank you for continuing to trust us to cover the sport. We do not take that burden lightly. We look forward to doing it through the rest of the season. And then a shout out, of course, to our sponsors here today. First, let's start with Ellesse. You saw me rocking this sweater all weekend long. As Jay aptly put it, I have shoulders now. Why not show them off? And that's what you get with the Ellesse crew. It's comfortable, it's affordable, it's everything you're looking for on and off the tennis court as well. Learn more by clicking on the link in the description to this show, of course. Shout out to our friends at SwingVision as well. And look, I actually don't think there were that many significant line calls altering this weekend's action. I thought it was a fairly clean weekend of play. I guess we can get to that, Jay, a little bit later, but you know what's going to ensure that we have fair play moving forward is the automated line calling technology provided by our friends at SwingVision. And that's not all. Their app offers so much more. All you got to do, click the link in the description to this podcast. You'll have access to all of it. Use our promo code CRACK20 to let them know we sent you there. You'll get $20 off plus a free 14-day pro trial. Shout out to our friends at Ellesse. Shout out to our friends at SwingVision. Shout out to the North Carolina Tar Heels. As I alluded to, fourth consecutive national indoor title. And I do have to say, personally, I've had a front seat to all four. I've been fortunate enough to be on the broadcast for all four. And each of them are a bit of a different story. One could argue maybe not the biggest individual challenge they face. That will always be the Texas 2021 match. But in terms of the collective effort, start to finish for this Tar Heel team, there were no layups. They, face a very tough Pepperdine team 4-2 in the opening round of the event. They face a very tough Michigan team, shorthanded, but a Michigan team that was obviously aggressive, playing to win. Tough 4-1 win there for the Tar Heels. They have the test of tests we talked about in Texas A&M. They're the only team to overcome dropping the doubles point in the main draw, ultimately earn a 4-2 win in that match. And then we get to this final where the Tar Heels turned up the Jets. This is the North Carolina team we forecasted we might see throughout the course of the season. Of course, they faced a Georgia team who beat them. The last loss at the National Indoor Finals 2019 in Seattle. Katarina Jokic from 5-2 down in the third. She takes it 7-6 to clinch. But of course, this Carolina team beat Georgia 5-2 earlier this season in Chapel Hill, a match that featured tons of three-set battles, a doubles deficit overcome by the Tar Heels. It was amazing to see that story play out again in our final. And that's where we start as we look back at this final match, Jay. If Georgia was going to win this, they had to come out strong in doubles because the depth, the strength of that Carolina singles lineup is overwhelming. Georgia had a lead through the first 30 minutes. They played well.
Yeah, it looked like they were going to take doubles. You started to see them kind of creep away in some of those sets, kind of middle of the first sets there, kind of taking a 3-1, 4-2 type advantages. And North Carolina came back. I think at number 2 doubles, Meg Kowalski and Mel Riaska, who had been strong all weekend for Georgia, was able to seal the win there at number 2. And then pretty immediately, Abby Forbes and Riley Tran flipped the script there at number 3 doubles, which was a really back and forth match until they eked out at that 5-4 game. And then all eyes turned to number 1 doubles, two teams that have been, playing at the highest levels. You have Reese Brantmeyer with her pro double success, Elizabeth Scotty, former NCAA doubles champion, taking on, Gigi Grant and, Mai Narundorn, who, despite not playing that high in the singles lineup, hold their own at number 1 doubles, are a very good duo together. And that was, a very back and forth match, right? It was really unclear who was going to win that match. North Carolina is certainly the aggressor, but oftentimes misfiring in that set. Ultimately comes down to a tiebreak that North Carolina ends up taking.
Well, you touched on it. Georgia's did come out of the gates hot, right?
Yep.
And to look at this Georgia team, Deuce Point, they're down, I think, 40-15 in that opening game. Grant and Narundorn break right away. And it's the balance of that team. Narundorn missed like 3 shots from the baseline, maybe from the quarterfinals onwards in doubles. She was that solid. And then, as you can see, I'm clearly losing my voice here. But for Grant, her movement at the net, her size, her confidence in closing things out, whether it be with the poach, with the overhead, they're such a balanced team. They played such fundamentally sound doubles at that one spot. They protected that lead extraordinarily well. And it looked like, again, Georgia was going to take the doubles point. They were better for the first 30 minutes. Riasco, Kowalski get up on an early break. Now, Crawley and Gillig get that break back. But that match was dead even until ultimately Riasco, Kowalski pull away with that 6-4 win. You mentioned it as well. It's 4-all 15-40. Georgia's up in Abby Forbes' third service game at that number 3 spot. And it was simultaneously 5-4, Georgia serving for the set at that number 1 spot. And that's when the Tar Heels showed why they are who they are. And Forbes and Tran, they're just good. They're sneaky good. Forbes puts a ton of balls in play. I think Riley Tran is sneaky springy at the net as well. She was poaching way more than I anticipated, hitting the overhead pretty confidently. Again, the poaching to me was the most impressive thing. And then that number 1 doubles battle, that's just damn good tennis. Like, again, Narundorn's firing away, putting pressure on Scotty, Brantmeyer, Grant, both so active at the net. Let's have the Scotty Brantmeyer discussion. Oh my God, is that team good? Because I swear to God, Jay, I don't remember when Scotty and McKenna Jones were winning the NCAA doubles title. I don't think Elizabeth Scotty was that good of a volleyer. She is that good of a volleyer now. And Brantmeyer's athleticism at the net is just a joke. How eager and exceptional she is crossing there. That's a really, again, Crawley and Tangillig were ranked number 1 in the country. I do think Scotty and Brantmeyer are the best doubles team on that roster.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm all in on the team yet. I think it's
Okay.
hard because the semifinal, they took a bad loss. It was a fine loss, but from a scoreline perspective against Brandstein and Stoyana, who I thought played some of the best doubles I'd seen all tournament. I think oftentimes Scotty can start missing, particularly from the baseline. And Reese being so aggressive, it's about kind of modulating how often she goes for those poaches and when she goes, if she's going at the right time. So they have all the pieces when they're both playing well together. Very difficult team to beat. Mm-hmm. They were very up and down, though, in that set, right? There were games where they were not playing well at all. You had multiple misses in a row. I mean, they had
a million opportunities, like 15-30s or, 15-40s even, where then there were 3 misses in a row. So I just, I think it was streakiness, and you're right. It was both ways.
Yeah, I think it was streakiness, but they came out on top in that match. But yeah, I think Scotty is more aggressive now than she was when she won the title. And I think it helps her to have Reese, who I think is probably more aggressive around the court fully than McKenna Jones was at that time. So yeah, they're playing aggressive tennis. It's a tough team given that, their strengths complement each other pretty well.
Yeah, and especially after Texas A&M took it to North Carolina in the semifinals. it was the aggression Scotty and Brantmeyer played with. Yes, Narundorn got Scotty in a couple of baseline exchanges in what was a really high quality breaker to decide it. But again, Brantmeyer kept coming. Scotty kept swinging, and Georgia played well. They are one of the 5 best doubles points we saw throughout the course of the weekend, maybe even higher than that. And in a tournament where it was so difficult to overcome 1-0 deficits, that's a huge thing for them moving forward. But again, second time this season, Georgia's had North Carolina's back, pressed against the wall in doubles. North Carolina responds, and then the Tar Heels separated. I mean, again, this was their most dominant match in singles. And ultimately, it's tough because Liamai gets injured towards the end of that first set, although certainly Crawley had a million opportunities throughout the course of that as well.
I mean, that didn't matter.
Yeah.
Yarlagadda was already off the court by the time that was happening. So to that point,
basically. I'm saying, though, 5 first sets ultimately for the Tar Heels, it was more the quick 4. And to your point, it was really a very quick 3. It was Forbes, it was Brantmeyer, and then to your point, it was 2-0 Tar Heels in about an hour as Annika Yarlagadda, after a tough 3-set loss to Smetnikov of A&M the day prior, I mean, she bounces back 1 and 2. She was outstanding. Forbes was outstanding. Ultimately, again, Tan Gillig as well. This was the Tar Heels flexing their muscles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Yarlagadda came out on fire after that match against Texas A&M, probably not facing the stiffest competition. Kowalski seemed to be struggling in those last few matches here at indoors. I think it was a different Kowalski than the one that we saw beat Stanford's Alexis
And she had
Blakina.
her shoulder heavily taped, which is worth noting. That left shoulder, you could just tell something was a little off. And she will be the last human in the world to make excuses. But yeah, Yarlagadda was able to capitalize on that form.
Yeah, as were a few other players on the weekend.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so she gets off the court. I mean, I think literally she was off the court before that first set of Fiona Crawley and Leah Ma finished. And then, Tan Gillig has a close first set, 7-5, and then she steamrolls with the bagel 6-0 in the second. And you were sitting there and it was like, oh, this is going to happen really quickly because you had, Carson getting close to the finish line. You had Abby Forbes getting close to the finish line, both players who had closer first sets, 7-5 and 6-4 respectively. And then the clip of the games piling up in the second. I mean, it was full steam ahead on both of those courts.
And we'll get to the clinch in a moment, but let's talk about the Georgia side of things now. Again, if you're head coach Jeff Wallace, associate head coach Drake Bernstein, you're telling your team, we take doubles, it's a new ball game. And we were right there. And you look at some of the singles performances. Vidmanova Brantmeyer was destined to go 3 sets, and the quality of that match was absolutely outrageous. 2 aggressive, athletic, future professional tennis players playing some really good ball indoors at the Nordstrom Tennis Center. Leah Ma played Crawley even through that first set, or just did enough to stick around, much like she did in Chapel Hill a few weeks prior. And then, look, the big question for Georgia, who's 6? Is it Lapata? Is it Narundorn? Is it Grant? Indoors, Gigi's a great option. Her aggressiveness, that willingness to move forward. We saw her in the clinch against Iowa State, 3 sets over Chea Kazuka, where, again, Kazuka just didn't have the legs left in the third set to keep up against the sustained aggression of Gigi. She takes the only first set Georgia gets on the board. Yes, credit to Tran, who was fighting really well at that 6th spot, but Gigi's right there. Is that the option moving forward? Let's start there with the Georgia side, your assessment of their performance.
I don't know if it is the option. I think Lapata played really well against Georgia when they played this match at North Carolina.
Against North Carolina.
Yeah. In Chapel Hill. Yeah. Against North Carolina. I was surprised we didn't see Lapata get action in singles. I don't know if she's also dealing with an injury that's keeping her confined to doubles, but I think
because she didn't play at all this weekend, to your
point. No
singles
action for her, right? So when they move outdoors, I anticipate that she will get some looks. Maybe she still needs to play her way into that position, earn her way, but she's someone who will make you hit a lot of balls, right? So outdoors, maybe you like her at number 6. So, I thought Gigi played well on the weekend, but I'm not sure that they have their 6 locked yet.
Yeah, it's because they have more options. You would expect them to continue to play around. And look, Kowalski, tough ending to her weekend, but you saw the win over Blokina on day 1, even the win over Guzman on day 2, both huge wins for this team. And she was undefeated coming into this event. We know what she will be in this lineup. It was a tough weekend for Riasco. I just don't think indoors will ever be her preferred surface, but I'm still in. Like, I thought she progressively got better and better and better with every day. She played a really good first set against Tan Gillig. Then Carson just sort of separated from there. I'm actually feeling fine about Mel coming out of this weekend. Like, and again, Hurdle played well too. Huge win in the semifinals at 5 to get off in straight sets. She and Lapata playing really good doubles at that number 3 position all weekend long. After the tough start, you lose to North Carolina. What seems like just will forever be the most fascinating result of the season, the Ohio State women doing what they did to Georgia in that match in Columbus. Coach Wallace said it after the match in the post trophy ceremony. Post-trophy, the trophy ceremony is the name of that part of the event. He said, for us to bounce back the way we did after last weekend, that shows us about this team. He's 100% correct. If you're coming out of this as a Georgia fan, you feel like this group, once you figure out that 6 singles position, you hopefully get everyone healthy come May, you have what it takes, do they not?
Yeah, they do. And I think he also said in that trophy presentation that normally it's really tough to get up there with the mic in hand after being on the losing end of a match like this, but didn't feel that way. Stepping up to the mic, really proud of his team for their performance, for their bounce back, like you talked about, and ultimately they got beat by a better team on that day. So coming out, you look at these options outdoors. Look, Leah Ma has been a revelation for this Georgia team, playing the best tennis of her career, the best tennis I've ever seen from her, and I think that is a huge bonus for this team. There's no reason why they shouldn't feel confident leaving this tournament.
Very well said. And to your point, North Carolina won the match. And now let's talk about the Tar Heels, what they've accomplished over the course of the past 11 seasons. You look for this North Carolina team under Coach Calvis since the start of the 2013 season. North Carolina 39-4 overall at this event. They've won 91% of their matches, lost 4 times over 11 years. They've made 10 finals, 7 different titles. They become the first school on the women's side to win 4 consecutive indoor titles. The only other school to do it, a school you and I remember very, very fondly, the 08-11 Virginia teams, the Somdev to Shabazz era of Virginia tennis, swept 4 in a row. And again, it's elite company for this North Carolina program. And all weekend long, you know, Crawley doesn't lose a match. And she really should have won that first set 6-2, 6-3, but Ma just kept finding her way out of breakpoint scenarios. And that's a testament to Ma, but she's a piece. You know, obviously Carson, slow start, but to clinch 3 sets over Ewing, win the way she did in the final, you know, Yarlagadda, Tran, Forbes, they're all options in the bottom of the lineup. Brantmeyer is as good as advertised. And then again, without Elizabeth Scotty here in this final, they go out and win 3 straight set matches in singles, 2-4-0 Georgia. Your reflections on what this North Carolina program has accomplished on their level in the final.
Well, it's historic, right? You know, credit to Brian Calbus and what he's done there. He's now the winningest women's head coach at National Indoors. He now surpasses Andy Brandy. They were tied for 6 titles each. Now he has his 7th. There's not much more to say, right? This is a program who comes out, starts the season extremely well, and that success has been a proven track record here at Indoors. And I think what impressed me the most about this team and this performance is that they won in a lot of different ways this weekend, is that they had to have different players step up. They had different looks, as you mentioned at the top of the show. They had a really tough draw, right? We all circled that Pepperdine match to start and say, this could be a semifinal. This could be a final. And they had to find different ways. And I think particularly the way that they, you know, came out after that semifinal, which you could have an emotional letdown after playing such a intense, high quality match. You could feel like, hey, this is ours, right? We've already earned this, and that's not the case. You have to go out and actually earn it. And they did that, and they made short work of that final and really flexed their muscle. And there's no questions, right? We've talked about the talent this team has on paper, talent on the court as well.
Yeah. And to that point, Having been on the broadcast for the past 4, and I apologize, I know I pride myself as the historian. I'll have to do my research. I can't speak to the 13, 15, 18 titles as well as I can speak to these last 4. They're all different stories. 2020, longtime listeners know. Jay, what am I about to say?
They would have won the national NCAA championship that year.
The
They get
delta
it half.
between them and the rest of the field was so big in that 2020 national indoors. And UCLA, Bolton, Forbes, Jada Hart, it was a good team. Couldn't touch North Carolina from a depth perspective. NC State was good. They were still a couple of years away. And yeah, there were some other lingering teams, but that UNC 2020 run, there was never a doubt in any match they played that they were going to ultimately win the title. 2021, you had the Texas match, and right there it was very clear there was a team on UNC's level. The Longhorns were going to be there in the future. 2022, they were the best of a field that wasn't ready yet. And what I mean by that is Texas wasn't quite ready yet. We saw what Oklahoma was, but still probably weren't quite ready yet. Obviously, A&M losing in the round of 16, Duke not even being there. The field wasn't quite ready yet with the experience the Tar Heels had. They were just better than everyone else. This year was different. The field was ready, and everyone had big guns with experience, and they got everyone's best. They got the full-fledged Pepperdine roster, beat them 4-2. They, struggled in doubles, ultimately take that doubles point, pull away in some 3-set matches in singles. Michigan match. Michigan's good. You're not on our level. They flex their guns. They get through that match. It got tight, but they get through pretty comfortably. Then they took the big punch in the chest. Then Texas A&M came out and said, we are more athletic than you. We are not afraid of you. We are going to smack you in doubles. That's what they did. How does North Carolina respond? 4 first sets in singles. The 2 courts where they lost first sets, they force 3-set battles. They get through in that match. Tan Gillig gets a big clinch 7-6 in the third. Abby Forbes lingers down 4-0. And then to your point, they rally off of that and they say, wait, okay, we are that good. Let's stay that good. And they were that good in that national indoor final run. And so if you're asking me to weigh the past 4, again, I'll try to avoid recency bias. I come out of 2020, UNC was the best team. It wasn't even close. I come out of 2022 is probably my second best of the 4, saying, look, A&M's really good. There's a couple of other teams that are young, that are talented, that are frisky, but UNC's a clear-cut tier 1 team. And I'm not as, again, and I just don't know about the rest of the field in comparison, maybe other than a few schools. When we get to our 1 takes, we'll get into that. Is that a fair assessment of the history, Jay? I apologize for the monologue.
Well, the history is accurate.
Okay.
Coming out of these 4 events, the question is, which team do you feel best about?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean 2020, yes.
Yeah.
2021, I think you still felt really good, right?
Mm-hmm.
2022, you still felt really good. Look, there are still questions about other teams, right? And I think that's
okay.
The interesting thing here is I feel like North Carolina, better than any other team, starts their season phenomenally, right? All these other teams, either they're banged up, they're not motivated yet, they just struggle to get that momentum early in the season in a way that North Carolina does not. I think that's a huge testament to the program and the success they have at this tournament. Yeah, I feel really good about this North Carolina team leaving this tournament. And we'll have to see. Right. So that's the elephant in the room, right? How does this translate to outdoor success and NCAAs in May? It's not to take away from the history, right? They have done at this tournament and coming away feeling great about their chances in May. But, we've been certainly in this position before.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. Again, massive expectations on the shoulders of these Tar Heels. You have 7 top 30 players. You have to deliver results. They did exactly that once again. 7th national indoor program title in program history. First school with 4 in a row. 39-4. Come on, just absolutely laughable. But you mentioned those other schools. Let's do it then. It's time for our national indoor 1 take recap. 1 take per team, Jay. I'll go by order of results. So obviously we've already offered our takes on North Carolina, on Georgia, Texas A&M. The floor is yours.
I come away, they are on the level of North Carolina. They are there. If I'm North Carolina, I'm circling that team and going, they could very well get us in May outdoors on the level is how I would summarize them.
North Carolina were the winners. Texas A&M is the story coming out of these national indoors. And the reason I say that is, to your point, Svetnikov at 6. Come on now. Her forehand might have been the biggest weapon in the building. Kupras at 4. Real deal. The physicality, the totality of things she can do, how well she competes. They take it to North Carolina in doubles, and we'll get into our all tournament teams. There are certainly going to be some Aggies in the conversation there. You're right. They're in that tier 1 conversation once again. And, you know, they get tested on day 1. They ultimately respond to win over San Diego. They flexed their muscles against Ohio State on day 2, and they were in a winning position against UNC, and they forced their third sets from J.C. Goldsmith, from Selma Ewing, who down a set and a break takes an injury timeout, and then she's at 7-6 in the third. Talk about impressive. Like, yes, I agree with you. They're on the level. You made a face when I say they're the story. Why do you disagree, or why'd you make a face?
Iowa State's the story of this tournament.
Okay,
not
so
Texas
let's
A&M.
get so hold on, let's get there then, because that's your next semifinalist. Why are they the story? Give it to me.
I mean, look, this is a team who 5 years ago was in the bottom tier of Power Five schools, right? A team that had never beaten another Big 12 team in Texas, a school that has nowhere close to the facilities of most of these schools that we're talking about, has 2 indoor courts, has to go on the road for most of their matches, a school that has had to build their program from basically scratch, right? Bring in players, develop them. They're not getting the top recruits in the US, let alone, internationally as well. They've built that program. They've done it in 5 years. We saw this last year with Oklahoma continuing to build that program. Look, 5 years is the number. Iowa State comes away from this entirety of kickoff weekend and indoors as the story to go on the road. Their top, highest ranked win in program history over UCLA, highest ranked win in program history over Miami, highest ranked win in program history against Vandy, against Texas. They're the story of the tournament. The Cyclones are the real deal, and it's really exciting to have new faces.
You made the case well. That's absolutely correct. What this program has done, their record against Texas schools prior to Boom Messiah arriving, and the fact that at their first national indoor Final 16 field, they make the freaking semifinals. And in that car ride home, our car ride to the airport, Jay and I had the discussion. Again, what's the order of the Big 12 right now? You throw Oklahoma, Texas. Now you have to put Iowa State in that conversation. We know Oklahoma State, a really solid school as well. They are now from, it's nice, 4-3 win over UCLA, 4-3 win over Miami. They made the national indoors. That's a nice moment. Now it's no. You're in the top 8 discussion. Like, it's real. You have a window now. You got to win over Vandy. You win out and beat Texas. You're in the conversation
them
now.
Handily.
Yeah, exactly. You are in the conversation now. The depth is real. The experience is real. The energy is real. They are riding a wave. Yeah, good case by you. They are the story coming out of the national indoors. And again, to your point, they beat Texas handily in the quarterfinals. Texas recovers. They beat Oklahoma in their final Sunday match. Where are you with this young, still gelling Longhorn team?
It feels similar to last season, probably a little bit better. I think they're playing a little bit better now relative to the start of the 2022 season. Look, they got a lot of new pieces. You have Nicole Kieran, freshman at number 1, Nicole Rivkin, Nicole 5, as you call her, who's struggling, but got a good win against Emma Staker. Certainly has the weapons to be successful.
Couldn't agree more.
No questions about that. So, I think for this Texas team, my question is going to be number 2 singles, right? Who plays number 2 singles? Will that be a weak spot for them? I feel fine about Texas moving forward. I think they're a very dangerous team. The depth they have is very real. Pachkaleva, Marley Zane, those players playing at the bottom of the lineup potentially. That's going to be a tough team to beat.
Interesting. See, for me, the question is who's 4? Because I feel pretty good about Kieran or Nicole 1, Shivathapan, and a healthy Zainalova, who, of course, gets banged up. Hopefully she will recover soon in those top 3 positions. My question is, again, Zane was really good at the number 6 spot all weekend long. And I don't know how you don't put her in the singles lineup. Similarly, we know what Pachkaleva is capable of at her healthiest. It's clear Rivkin has weapons that you don't want to mess around with. And then Malaika Rapalou is really good as well. And so you're right. It's legitimate depth. The best sort of question to answer for Howard Jaffe. He does need to find those solutions. I think they'll switch around their doubles lineups a couple more times as well, because they were fine, but fine obviously isn't going to be good enough this season. They beat Oklahoma. It's a good win over Duke in the round of 16, knocked out by Georgia. Tough loss, obviously, against Texas as well. Where are you with the Sooners?
Yeah, that win against Duke was great, right? They needed that win to come out of the gates. They looked like Oklahoma of last year against the Duke match, and then they didn't look like Oklahoma in their subsequent matches. So, gosh, one line on Oklahoma is, they need the swagger back.
Yeah.
We've seen it in parts, in matches, in pieces, but just match to match, it's missing.
No, it's cohesive. It's that you'll click one match, but then she won't click the other match. It'll be stinker
exactly.
here,
Spotty.
But yeah, exactly. That's a good word for it. Spotty. It's getting everyone to click together. I think it's stock up for Sleeth coming out of the weekend. She got progressively better, and obviously when you get outdoors, that's going to be nice for her as well. I'm in on I actually think Guzman's the best player in their lineup right now, and
she's playing really well.
Yeah, she's healthy again, and yes, she lost to Kowalski, but she just got off to such a slow start in that match. And I do think she is back to the level we saw from her freshman season pre-injury. I really liked Pisareva at 6. Like, I thought her level was really high, especially in that first match against Barankova, 3 sets against Zane in the Texas match. That's not a bad result. Obviously one they want to flip. Again, it's getting everyone to peak at the same time, and you have 3 more months to do it. So again, you take this result. It's another data point for this Oklahoma team. I'm not selling the stock yet. Like, again, they've taken some lumps early in the season. I'm still holding on to the stock. Jay, are you?
Well, I'm an investor, right? So I'm I'm an early day investor in the
You're on the
Oklahoma
floor.
stock.
This is true. This is true.
So I'm holding on to that equity for sure.
It's a good call. All right, other side of the draw, 2 Big Ten teams. Let's start with the winner of the dual match between the two of them on Sunday. It was Michigan, who goes 2-1 at this event, and now you have wins over Virginia. You got to win over Ohio State already, and you're gonna, again, that they are gonna play at least twice before the Big Ten tournament, and so that's a big win for the Wolverines, who got them without Lily Jones. Was out the final 2 days of the event, and you saw whether it was Nicole Hammond or Gala Messicharito, obviously Bailey Shinen hopping in the lineup on days as well. Your take from these Michigan Wolverines?
Well, the best team in the Big Ten. And I think that was a question mark coming in, particularly with Ohio State's win over Georgia. They put that to rest real quickly. You had the eye test, I think, said Michigan was better. People were thinking maybe Michigan is the better team here. I think they proved that, right? They came out, they played very well this tournament, even when they were shorthanded, particularly that match against North Carolina should have been nowhere near as close as that was. They kept it close. So this Michigan team, pretty clearly to me, the best team in the Big Ten, in pole position, I would say right now for that top 8 seed.
I'll do a gelled take. The Big Ten's getting a top 8 seed. They are not getting boxed out this year. Ohio State, Michigan have now collectively assembled enough wins. Congratulations, guys. You dug your conference out of a hole. Like that actually is. And if they drop a conference match to a Wisconsin, to a Northwestern, to anyone else, like now the Big Ten can slowly work its way back into the top 40 of these ITA rankings. And yeah, the Michigan depth is real. Julia Fligner getting a win over Tan Gillick is massive for her. And I'll take Kari at 2 to go 3 sets. She's not losing a match in straights. She's just not. And on the right day, Jaden's beating anyone, and the energy they bring, it's exceptional. Yeah, it's stock up on these Michigan Wolverines. They're legit top 8 good. That's no longer a question. I still think the same about the Buckeyes, who played really well against an Auburn team that ultimately goes 2-1. And look, they lost to A&M. That was a reflection of A&M, not a reflection of Ohio State. I think this Ohio State team's still finding what their best lineup is. Wilson, Allen, Brizniak, and Lucia Marzal, all the options they have in the bottom of their lineup. Ratliff, Kontos, figuring out 1-2 there, getting Boulay healthy. I still think this Ohio State team's top 8 good. That's my take for them. What say you?
I was just gonna say my take is that they're not top 8 good.
Wow.
I think they will be buoyed by those wins they got at home, particularly this win against Georgia will carry them very far throughout the rest of the season because this Georgia team is going to be ranked pretty high based on making the ITA indoor finals. The computer will like that. Yeah, I'm going. I would sell my Ohio State stock.
They have NC State at home, playing A&M in Orlando. They're at UCLA, at Pepperdine. Wisconsin's a home match, at Northwestern. They're at Michigan. That's the interesting one. Okay. I mean, again, you beat Pepperdine, the pathway's still there, I think. So it's not like I think the pathway's still there. I do think this team has the depth. I don't think they're peaking yet.
I'm not saying they won't be a top 8 seed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying they are not a top 8 team in the country.
Well, that might just be a reflection of some of the other schools we have. I think they're in that tier 2 mix. Yeah, like that 4 through 12, where it's like, yeah, that's probably the bunch where Ohio State sits. But again, that is your look at all of your quarterfinalists. Let's get to the round of 16 teams, all of who'd had varying success in the consolation draw. Let's start with 2-1 Auburn. I mean, to pull out that match the way they did against Pepperdine after escaping against San Diego the day prior, this team has the energy. They fight, Jay. That's my take.
Yeah, this is a team you circle and say this is a team that competes so hard, right? And they are a tough out for anyone. It reminds me similar to what we talked about with Oklahoma last year, where on paper you're not sure where these wins are going to come from, but they find the wins. That was a incredibly impressive win over Pepperdine, a massive win for Auburn and also for the SEC, right? To get that Pepperdine scalp. I think it was a great performance from some of their freshmen, like DJ Bennett, who had struggled at the number 3 position, moves down to 4, gets the win over Tum Chaiwat. So huge performance from this Auburn team who, probably isn't at the very top of the SEC, but, at the number 3, 4 position, going to be a very tough out.
We'll stay at this half of the draw. Pepperdine, what's your take?
Tough tournament for Pepperdine. Obviously, the tough draw. I have to imagine that losing that match took a little bit of the wind out of their sails, right? Thinking that they could go in, take out UNC, losing to North Carolina without Crawley in the lineup. Not great. I think they end on a pretty disappointing note to Auburn. That's a match Pepperdine should never lose. Think they have health challenges. Caroline Campagna in a left wrist cast, right? So they're now really down to 6 players there. Look, they got to find answers. They'll be very glad to move outdoors. I'm not very worried about Pepperdine just because their schedule affords them a lot of opportunities to get more points. They've got a lot of teams coming to Malibu. They're also going on the road. So we'll see a lot more Pepperdine team, but overall disappointing indoors.
Fair. I mean, here's my thing. Stanford, Cal, both canceled. They'd played 2 matches coming into these national indoors. Not a team that plays indoors either. I'm reserving judgment. My take on Pepperdine is I still have no idea how good they're going to be. Savannah Brodus was as advertised. Chen was hot and cold throughout the weekend. Lisa Czar, never a tough out. I, again, think that Auburn win had more to say about Ansari and just the collective energy of that group than it did about anything Pepperdine did wrong. And Ansari did the same thing against San Diego the day prior. Yeah, I don't know about Pepperdine yet. I still think they're in that tier 2 mix as well. Virginia?
I'm stock up on Virginia. I think they looked solid. I think particularly given that they did not have Julia Adams, their number 1 singles player, for at least one of those matches, right? I think they had an overall pretty decent performance. I liked how they competed against was their second round match there.
For Virginia was against Pepperdine.
Yeah, Pepperdine, and then they get the San Diego win. So I think stock up. I think they have real depth. It was the Michigan match I was thinking.
Yeah, okay,
that first round match actually. Look, that one got away from them. I felt like that felt to me like, hey, they haven't played top 25 competition to start the year. Michigan has. And so a lot of those close matches with Michigan went the way of Michigan. I feel like Virginia now will be ready for the slate of ACC foes they have coming. But again, not a Virginia team that's as good as last year.
Yeah. See, Julia Adams was out against Virginia, so it was tough. She was slowly working her way back in against Michigan. Thank you. So she was slowly working her way back in throughout the course of the weekend. Subhash didn't play great. I like their pieces. Like Collard looks great in her day, stepping in against Michigan, and I reserve judgment. I don't think they're the best version of themselves yet. I still think they have time as well. Last team on this side, San Diego. They first sets in singles against Auburn. They were right there at the finish line. Now knocked out against Virginia on the final day of this event. And I don't know if you mentioned the score, 4-1 win for UVA, but I don't think San Diego played poorly this weekend. I thought they were they tested Texas A&M as well, right? A bunch of 3-setters in that one. I think you're feeling pretty good if you're head coach Nadia Abdallah coming out of the weekend.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say about Texas A&M. I think it was 4-0, but like all of those matches, they fought back, right?
I think they won the corners in straight sets, Brandstein and Smetnikov, and then the middle four were
everything
all
3
setters. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So they really tested them, and we saw how good Texas A&M was at this event. So yeah, it's always tough to go 0-3. But I think you come out that's getting, top 25, top 16 competition that they'll carry over.
Let me ask you this. Can they beat Pepperdine?
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's the takeaway is they're like, hey, we can beat Pepperdine. Like we are that good. We improve a couple things, maybe go outdoors here in San Diego.
Yeah.
I think that's the takeaway is like, okay, if it happens, I'm not going to be shocked.
Yep. And unlike some of the teams who make indoors in like surprising runs, right? Like Old Dominion last year, sometimes they don't have the schedule after that to back it up, right? Hey, we got looks at these top teams. We maybe didn't get a win. How do we go get a win for the rest of the season? This San Diego team has opportunities. They will, of course, play Pepperdine. They are in their conference. They're also playing teams like Stanford, Oklahoma. They have a lot of non-conference wins that they can take this experience into.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to the other side of the draw. Duke ends up 2-1. They bounce back 4-3, dramatic victory over Stanford, then the 4-1 win over Washington on Sunday. We talked about this team in the car. This is another one. I just think Duke is not even close to where they'll be in May. I think this Duke team is still a little bit banged up, not exactly sure where everyone should play in the lineup. I think from Beck, Mora, you saw exactly what you expected throughout the course of the weekend. Obviously for Mora, tough she couldn't get over that Yapafanova finish line, but competed well in all of her matches. Jackson's got real weapons. That was something that stood out to both of us. And then again, figure out what should the rest of the lineup look like? Who plays where? Where do we work in Coleman, who I thought looked a lot better this year? Brizgalova, can we get Shvets healthy? Can we get Georgia Drummy healthy? I'm not out on this Duke team. I just don't think they're healthy, right? They're clearly not at their best. That's the take. And they still go 2-1.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have Duke and North Carolina. North Carolina plays some of their best tennis to start the year. Duke always ends strong, right? They rarely are playing their best tennis early in the season here. Takeaways. Jackson's the real deal, like you talked about. She is playing phenomenal. I expect more of a sophomore surge from her. Georgia Drummy, very clearly not healthy this event, really struggling with back issues, had to serve underhand in some of her matches, wincing in pain. You hope that she's healthy. When she's healthy, that top 4 is locked in, right? You have Beck, Drummy, Mora, Jackson, and then you got a lot of pieces to factor in. I thought Ellie Coleman is playing much better tennis than she was last year. She's very solid down there. And then you need one of Brizgalova or Svets to really click. Hold to use the stock analogy on this Duke team. I expect we'll see a lot more from them in the coming months.
Washington, the massive 4-3 victory over Vanderbilt. Such a fun end to that match. They ultimately, again, dropped that match 4-1 on Sunday to Duke, but I like their depth. Like, I think the 2 transfers, Saker and Kerr from Columbia, they're real options. They're going to grind. And you look again, Sato's pretty solid at that number 1 spot. We know how good Fortin can be at that number 2 position. When you never know how healthy Olsen is. She's clearly taken massive steps forward since last season. Got a really big win for them over Vanderbilt on day 2. I like their fight. I like their collective energy as a group. They're a group that certainly believes in one another, and we know how valuable that can be. I mean, Stanford's Stanford's still the class of the Pac-12, and we'll get to them next. But I think this Washington team now is in that top 16 conversation.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you want when you host this event, right? They come away with a top 10 win. And that will help them significantly, particularly when these other Pac-12 schools don't have many options for a top 10 win. So huge win for the Washington program, particularly to do it the dramatic fashion they did. Third set tiebreak there against Vanderbilt. You come away feeling like, hey, we can compete with these teams. We're right in the mix.
No, very well said. And, again, thank you to Coach Stevenson and the entire Washington team staff for hosting us. We're so gracious, and I always enjoy my time in Seattle. All right, let's talk about the Cardinal. What a weird freaking tournament for this Stanford team. Obviously knocked out Georgia round 1, knocked out 4-3 in a Duke match where they continue to fight. Then on day 3, we see them sneak out their first doubles point. Yepafanova moved up to the top spot. Connie Ma at 2. She bounces back with a win. Angelica Blake continues to do her thing at that 3 spot. Again, Choi and Shu didn't have the best weekends, but you like them as options, particularly as you move outside. Blokina, first indoors for the freshman. She's clearly got some game. Those were a lot of takes, not one. But the floor is yours. What's the one definitive take from the Stanford weekend?
They're going to send Washington a massive thank you card after this event, because Washington knocking out Vanderbilt let Stanford play Vanderbilt instead of Washington. Now, if they had played Washington, they're both, worse off, because now, no one's getting value from this event. So huge win for Washington. So Coach Farud, I'm sure, will send Robin a nice thank you card because now they come away with the top 10 win in Vanderbilt, of which that Vanderbilt ranking is going to be padded all season, because that NC State win is only going to appreciate in value. They will continue to rise in the rankings with Schneider. So very helpful for a Stanford team that massively needs wins. Look, Connie Ma, big disappointment on the weekend, really struggled indoors, really struggled with some of the conditions, just didn't look herself. The Connie Ma that we had seen last season was reminiscent of that 4 or 5 match streak, losing streak that she had last season, where things just didn't click for her. So it was not a cohesive team performance from Stanford.
Vanderbilt, final, last but not least, obviously tough weekend for the Commodores. 4-3 loss to Iowa State. 4-3 loss to Washington, 4-2 loss to Stanford. Feels like they're going to play a ton of 3-set close, tight matches, right? This team is really good everywhere. Not sure if they're great anywhere yet, although I really like the game of freshman Bridget Stamble in person. And again, this team is going to fight on every court individually. I'm still looking to see it, Jay. I'm still looking to see it. What say you?
Yeah, are they going to fight on every court individually? I did not see that this weekend. I think Vandy comes across to me as the most disappointing team on the weekend. Came in with high expectations from them. I know that they are struggling with some health issues. Freshman Sonia McAvey is not in the lineup. Hopefully they get her healthy. This was a low energy performance from Vanderbilt. I was really surprised. I expected more from this team. Yes, they struggled. Heartbreaking to lose 2 4-3 matches. It comes down to 2 third set tie breaks. I think some soul searching needed for this Vanderbilt team after the 0-3 weekend.
All right. Well, with all of that said, that's your look at each team's national indoor weekend. Last 2 things we want to do. Let's start with the all-tournament team, most outstanding player ballot. Let's go through each of the positions. Jay, who you have at 1? Singles.
At number 1 singles, I have Leah Ma of Georgia.
Wow. So I went Crawley. Make your case for Ma.
So those were the 2 I have.
Yeah.
The reason I went Leah Ma is, she was 2-0-2. Crawley was 2-0-1. Crawley didn't play against Pepperdine, and she DNF'd against Leah Ma. The reason why I went with Leah Ma is because that win over Connie Ma was pivotal. I think one that was like the announcement of her arrival here at indoors. It was a big win for this Georgia team to get the win over Stanford. First time since 1998 they've beaten the Cardinal. So, then she gets the win over Lane Sleeth. So 2-0-2, I give the nod to Leah Ma.
I go Fiona Crawley, 2-1. The emergency dental surgery. She's back in the lineup for them on day 2 of this event. And we'll get into who's the gal right now in college tennis, because I want to have that conversation coming out of the indoors. This is our first check-in point. I think it's her. Like, when your best player brings that sort of energy, and it's just so clear everyone on the team likes Fiona Crawley. And it's just like she is, it's just, again, it's one of those personalities, one of those people who takes your program over the top. She's that player. She wins that first set against Leah Ma, doesn't finish that match, but that was sort of the dagger where it's like, we're not even getting Ma at one. I'm not sure we see a pathway back for that Georgia team. She's the pick for me. Gets the win over Brandstein. That sort of just leveled things out, let everything play out on the other courts in that Texas A&M match. I go Crawley, but Ma's level certainly stood out throughout the course of the weekend.
Yeah, you get some, bonus points for the clinches, right? The
Yeah,
clinch with Connie Ma, the alleged clinch with Lane
sure.
Sleeth,
Well, extra bonus points too, because for the second consecutive year, thank you, Mrs. Crawley, for the gift. Well, it was very, very kind of her to do that. All right,
yeah,
number
she's
two.
the pick.
Yeah,
Mrs.
yeah.
Crawley's number one pick for singles. There you go.
Good call. All right, number two singles. Who's your pick? I went Dasha Viedmanova. I'll make my case. I'm curious if you agree.
Well, they stole my pick. I
Okay.
think that she's the pick here. I mean, 3-0, beating Yepifanova, Corley, Kajuru in straight sets, dead even with Brantmeyer when the match is called. I think she's a shoo-in.
Yeah, I agree with you. She played Brantmeyer even. 3 wins on the 3 prior days. The Yepifanova win was an extraordinarily level. To see her drop the first set against Brantmeyer, there was no doubt her body language. It was, oh no, I'll win this second, and hopefully some of my teammates follow me as well. The size, the athleticism, the shot selection, it's the real deal. And so shout out to Dasha Viedmanova. Yes, the clear-cut number 2 pick. By the way, no rules on this all-tournament team. They don't have to make the quarters, semis, whatever the official rule is. So you can cheat if you want, Jay. I bring that up because who's your 3 singles pick?
I thought you wanted to take the glory on this one, but my number 3 is Julia Fliegner of Michigan.
Wow.
Yes, 3-0 on the weekend. She beat Sarah Ziodato in a match that mattered. It came down to those final few matches. She gets the win over Carson Tangilig, Carson's one loss at the number 3 position, and then she beats Coley Allen in that match against Ohio State. I think there's a lot of options here at number 3 that you could go with, but I went with Julia Fliegner.
I went Brodus, undefeated as well, 3-0. And again, if that Pepperdine team becomes who we think they can become, it'll be because Brodus is just as good as advertised coming into this season. She's the real deal. Was down early breaks and just, again, straight sets in all of her matches. Julia was exceptional. I love that pick. I would go Brodus at the number 3 spot. Who are you going with at 4? I have 2 options. I'm curious who you pick.
I went Mishka Kadlachkova of Iowa State, another 3-0 player. She only drops 1 set. That was to Bridget Stammel of Vanderbilt, and then she knocks out Malaika Rapalou and Meg Kowalski in straight sets. Bonus points for the 0-0 win over Kowalski in that semifinal match.
That's the pick. I also have a flyer on Mia Kupris, who, again, was right there with Abby Forbes, up 4-0 in the third. She gets over the finish line. She might be my pick, but I think Kadlachova has to be the pick because, again, 3-0, the 0-0 win. Like, come on now. I agree with you. I think that's the clear-cut pick. 5 is fascinating. Who'd you go with?
Oh, 5 was a slam dunk. 5,
okay.
Anessa Lee, Vanderbilt, 3-0, 6-0 in sets. Cabezas, Sakar, Valencia Shu doesn't drop a set. Dominant in her match. The sets weren't even close. Anessa Lee, clear cut number 5 singles for me.
The best individual choice. I agree with you. I went UNC number 5 because you look at what the UNC number 5 did. It's a different player every time, but Yarlagata, the straight set win in the final. Scotty, the 3-set win in the semis. I think Tran with the clinching win over Michigan in the quarters, and then they were right there in the Pepperdine match. I want to say that match went unfinished at 5, or maybe Scotty did get over the finish line. I'm blanking here, but it's the UNC depth. Like, I just think it has to be represented in this all tournament team. And again, I can't pick an individual player, so I know that's not going to be the pick, but I would just put UNC number 5, carte blanche, and say whoever they play there, you feel really good about.
Yeah, cop out.
Yeah. Well, I had to have one. All right, who's your 6?
Daria Smetnikov of Texas A&M. She's 2-0-1. She doesn't go, get the 3-0, but she beats McBride of USD, and the Yarlagata win was really a revelation of just her talent, her announcement of her arrival here, and she was up in their match against Ohio State. So she's the pick for number 6 for me.
I agree. By the way, Kadlachova has to be in there because there needs to be some Iowa State representation, and so it's good that she's in at
Absolutely.
4. I think, again, you need some A&M representation as well, so Smetnikov has to be the pick here. And yeah, like, I don't know how she's going to move up in the lineup, but I don't know how she finishes the year at 6 because the weapons were that real. The physicality is real, and it's just fascinating watching her compete. All right, doubles gets weird. Who'd you go with?
Number 1, Carson Brandstein and Mary Stoyana at Texas A&M, 3-0. Capped off their performance with a dominant 6-1 win over Scotty and Brant Meyer for North Carolina. Number 1 doubles for me pretty clearly.
I agree with you. Number 2?
I went Riasco and Kowalski of Georgia. They were 3-1. The one loss was to Pisareva and Sleeth. Ultimately, they come up big time in some of Georgia's wins, particularly their comeback win against Stanford down 2-5 in that first round.
I go Ewing Goldsmith 3-0 on the weekend. Their win over UNC, and just again, that taking that doubles point was one of the more memorable things. And as such, having A&M as 1 and 2, that was the message where it's like, whoa, this team is that good. And I think that all tournament team, again, with them at 1 and 2 is a reflection of that. Who'd you go with at 3?
I went with Abby Forbes and Riley Tran.
As did I. Make the case.
Yeah, I went with North Carolina. One, because, needed to have some representation here from North Carolina. But look, they were 3-0-1, right? So they did not drop a set during the week. So ultimately, a solid performance. And, they play 4 matches. Everyone else plays 3. I give them the nod. They get the clinch. Not technically the clinch, but they help significantly, I think, alleviate some of the pressure at number 1 doubles in that final match. And plus, they get bonus points for those the pictures of the Riley Tran jumping into Abby Forbes' arms. Bonus points there.
Bonus for the twirl. Very well said. Well, then let's get to the final 2 questions. Most outstanding player, Jay. This is a very tough choice. We don't have 8-0 Ivana Corley this year. Who are you going with?
Well, the reason why I thought this was so challenging was because some of the players that we've talked about, at least, you look at Adasha Vidmanova at number 2, outstanding player, but she doesn't play doubles. And you look at Ivana Corley last year getting the 8-0 points because of doubles. I think that makes it challenging. You're going to give me crap for this, but I go Fiona Crawley. And and you said there are no rules. I give it to Crawley because I think you are right. I think that she is like the beating heart of this North Carolina team. She is their number 1 singles player. She played excellent in singles, doesn't drop a match. She didn't play as well, I thought, in doubles, but, ultimately who kind of, is holding the mantle right now for North Carolina, the winner of this tournament, it's Fiona Crawley.
So I think Fiona Crawley's the gal right now. She's the one you want more than any other person on your roster. If you're every college tennis coach in the country, you're saying you can have one player. We're not ready to say that about Diana Schneider. All due respect. Obviously, that's the easy answer. But I think Crawley's the pick from a chemistry standpoint, from a level standpoint. I agree with you. She's the gal. My most outstanding comes down to 2. Dasha Vidmanova, whose level, eye test-wise, was as good, if not better, than anyone else we saw in the draw. She doesn't play doubles, but 3-0-1 overall. Her being as good as she was is what just put Georgia on the level and allowed them to separate themselves from everyone else. But I think the pick I'm going to go with, and I think you'll laugh at this, I think the pick's Reese Brantmeyer. Because Brandmeier clinches that match against Pepperdine, obviously at the number 1 spot, the 3-set win against Janice Chen on day 1. She's in a battle 3 sets with Kari Miller on day 2, but then, for Brandmeier, straight sets over Kupras against A&M, and then wins she was
Stoyana,
not Kupras. Thank you. Stoyana of A&M, and then she was the best player in the most significant thing that happened in the final, the doubles point, where she was the best player on the court, and her aggression at the net is ultimately what separated North Carolina in that breaker and allowed them to take that 1-0 lead that Georgia could never overcome. And so I actually think the most outstanding player was Brantmeyer, and that would be my vote, even though she's not on my all-tournament team.
Yeah, well, I did that too, looking at Fiona Crawley. Yeah, I mean, I will say I don't think there's a clear-cut mop in this year. Brantmeyer's tough. I mean, he gets crushed in doubles at Texas A&M,
Yeah, but then wins the singles in straights.
Yeah, doesn't get the win against Michigan, against Kari Miller. I don't know.
You put some respect on Kari Miller's name.
Yeah, I think I think it
tough.
helps. She plays
There's
doubles.
No clear-cut mop.
It's tough. Yeah. And by the way, How on earth is Dasha Vidmanova not playing doubles? She has the best serve in women's college tennis right now. Put her in doubles so I can add her to my mop list.
Yeah, again, those are my two picks. I'd go Brantmeyer, but Vidmanova is the second pick. Do you agree Crawley's the gal?
She's been the gal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're telling me.
Yeah.
All right, with that said, final thing. Top 10 rankings coming out of the national indoors. We're ready to unveil them here at Cracked Racquets. Let's put that on your screen now. And again, thank you to everyone who's joining us live. Obviously, North Carolina, they were number one coming into the season for all of us. They retain that spot here coming out of the national indoors. You're smiling, not for all of us, but again, for North Carolina, they're still at the number one spot. A&M, with their results, we're all impressed. They climb up to number two. Georgia 3, interesting. Michigan 4, Ohio State 5, Iowa State now at 6. You then have NC State 7, Texas 8, Auburn 9. Duke comes in at the number 10 spot. So you don't see Pepperdine on that list anymore. You don't see Oklahoma on that list anymore. I mean, Jay, you made a smile. Your reaction to all of this.
I smiled when I saw Michigan, Ohio State at 4 and 5. That's wrong. I don't think those are your 4 and 5 best teams. Wow. Okay. I agree. Texas A&M should be 2. Absolutely. Those are your 2 best teams right now. Yeah, I'm pretty surprised about Michigan, Ohio State at 4 and 5. NC State is tough because it's tough to reward them for not making indoors, right? Just because we're seeing these other teams play and compete and happen to lose, they're not there. So tough to reward them.
So we're of the same thought there. We actually both had NC State at 9. I also had Michigan at 5. I had them behind Georgia. I had them behind Iowa State, just ahead of Ohio State. I don't know how we can. I mean, again, that's Chris and our fourth voter who can remain nameless but knows who they are. That's them, I think, thinking a little higher of these Big Ten schools. Iowa State, I guess, beating Vandy. Maybe they don't appreciate that victory as
Iowa
much.
State just beat the number 1 team in the country in Texas. They crushed them.
You're preaching to the choir, but again, I'm going to defend our rankings here collectively. I guess Michigan, Ohio State, a little more juice with the body of work.
I'm looking at these rankings right now. One of these other 2 has Michigan at 3, which is a lot.
And it's not me. Can you confirm it's not me?
It is not. It's not you.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. I was being honest. I have Michigan at 5. Let the record show. Yeah, that is striking to me that Iowa State is below those 2 Big Ten teams. But yeah, I think it's a tier. Like, I don't mind the 3 of them all being bunched together. I would just flip the order.
I don't know. The Iowa State resume right now is really strong. Miami, Vandy, Texas. I mean,
Georgia.
How much stock are we putting into Ohio State's win over Georgia on slick indoor courts that Georgia gets a day to prep on? Not much.
I like this. A spicy Jay as he looks at these rankings. Yeah, well, again, here's where we are. UNC, A&M, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa State, NC State, Texas, Auburn, and Duke. That right now is your Cracked Racquets top 10. With that said, we do have some college tennis ahead in the Division I women's world, but of course the focus here at Cracked Racquets going to be the Division I men's national indoor championships. They start Friday, 9 a.m. Central Time. It'll be me and Mike Cation on the call. We'll have coverage from first ball to last of all the action at the XS Tennis Center. Before I let you go, Jay, can I get a pick from the men's side?
Ohio State.
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because it's deja vu, right? Particularly of last season where they just look incredible indoors. The difference here is that they've done it outside of Columbus, right? So the wins over, Wake and UVA without Cannon Kingsley, pretty impressive. They do have the tougher draw, that top half of the draw with Ohio State, Michigan, Virginia, much tougher than the bottom half of that draw, which, TCU has a very favorable draw. So that's going to be tougher. That might be a little bit more banged up heading into the final, but I think Ohio State gets it done.
It's going to be certainly fun to watch, and we hope all of you join us again. First ball begins 9 a.m. Central Time Friday. We'll be back here tomorrow night to preview all of the action. Myself, Chris Halioris. With all of that said, of course, a shout out to our friends at Ellesse SwingVision for their continued support of this podcast. A shout out to super producer Daniel Westoff for the job he does day in, day out, making all of this content possible. And then one last time, a shout out to all of you, College Tennis Nation. We do appreciate all of you who reached out, who took the time to acknowledge the efforts we're making here at Cracked Racquets to bring attention to grow our beloved sport of college tennis. And we hope to see all of you tuning in this weekend throughout the course of the National Indoors. With all of that said, for the fantastic John J. Parsons, our super producer, Daniel Westoff, our friends at Ellesse and SwingVision, and from all of us here at both Cracked Racquets and the Tennis Channel Podcast Network, I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. Jay, what do we tell our listeners?
Hey, great shot.
And we will see you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.